Heidi is a very specialised nutrition practitioner who delves into complex biochemistry and physiology with very complex cases, such as cancer and autoimmunity. However, even in complex cases, it's incredibly important to get the basics right. So here she shares some insightful nutrition and lifestyle tips and analogies. Today we're with Heidi du Preez here in the beautiful Noordhoek in the Western Cape. Heidi is a nutritional scientist and she's a practitioner with complex cases, but she's got some lovely simple reflections that she's going to share with us. So Heidi, just starting off, what kind of practitioner are you?
You know, the clients that I see is mainly integrative oncology. So I work with cancer clients, supporting them, and inflammatory bowel disease or severe bowel disorders, systemic candidiasis, ulcerative colitis, and then metal toxicity. So those are the kind of areas that very complex cases, diseases. But what I found is, you know, even though it's this complex cases and going into complexity, I spend a lot of time in my consultations explaining the basics, the underlying, because, you know, you can go into a very complex treatment regime, but until you have the basic fundamentals in place, it's all in vain. It was actually a cancer client of mine the other day just had that aha moment and said, you know, I realized without just drinking enough water and I'm not breathing, you know, and until I'm doing those basic things, it doesn't make sense to go for very extensive, you know, treatment protocols. And I spend quite a lot of time in my consultations just initially up to an hour just explaining all these basic fundamentals that we need to have in place.
Okay, so what are some of the basics then?
If I can summarize, I think my healing philosophy, you know, is just to keep things simple because the human body is extremely complex. And then just to every time bring it down to simplicity is to support the body's own healing force. Our body has such amazing capacity to heal itself. We just simply have to give to the system what it needs and take away that what's causing stress or what's toxins, what it don't need. And it's just a whole, everything, and as we go through the whole talk, it's based on that simple healing philosophy. Give what it needs and take away what it don't need.
The depleters of the body.
Yes, if I maybe also this whole natural way of looking and supporting and where we work in functional medicine is to treat the underlying cause of disease. And if we think, okay, what is for me the main causes of disease? What is causing disease? We can clarify or put in 3 categories. And the first one is nutritional deficiencies. We're not having or getting the right nutrients, our system just can't function effectively. And then the other point is toxicity, how toxins is interfering with metabolic processes and how our body function. And this is all usually exacerbated by stress. So the main factor of where stress is coming in.
Yeah, stress has come up before a few times.
It's a main, and it's almost, and then usually it's a little bit of everything. You know, it can be a client that's had a very bad diet. I had a cancer client and he literally lived off cups of coffee and fast food. So it can, you know, then it's mainly nutritional deficiency, but it can be toxicity. But it's usually a little bit of everything and then exacerbated by stress.
And when you say toxicity, what are the main ones that you would tend to see?
Well, I think it's because I focus and work on metal toxicity, so your amalgam fillings and mercury and metals, heavy metals. But the other big factor is in the colon, the biotoxins generated by microbes. But I think if we just bring it back to the simplicity, and then I'll get later to those factors. And mainly in this talk, we're going to focus on nutrition, but I'm definitely going to just also highlight, you know, factors of toxicity and the effect it has, and also stress. But if we look at the cell, and if we ask ourselves, what does the cell need to function? The number one, it's oxygen. And also for us as a macro being, you know, it's on a cellular level, but we need to breathe. We need oxygen. That's the most important nutrient that we neglect a lot. And then it's water, hydration. The cell can't function without enough water. And then nutrients, very specific nutrients that cell needs to function. And the cells need to be able to eliminate waste, to get rid of its toxins. And it's all these factors that the cell needs to be healthy. And I brought in the factor of attitude, the attitude of that cell, but that's where stress comes in. We can sit here in the consultation and I can tell you not to eat chocolate and drink coffee, and you can walk out of here and say, the hell with you. And it's that attitude, but that has actually the biggest effect on our health, and that's sort of that emotional, spiritual, our stress effect. But if we just on a bottom line bring it down to a cellular level, it's those things that we need. And I think we'll focus mainly on nutrition.
Yeah, but just to reiterate something you just said, before we talk about food, breathing and water are fundamentals. And most of us don't know how to breathe, and we don't have enough good quality water.
Well, I usually bring it into perspective. We can survive for 2 minutes without oxygen around. So it shows that's the most important. We can't survive without oxygen. And then I think it's like 2-3 days without water. Yeah. So next to oxygen, water is the most important nutrient. And I see about 80-90% of my clients is just chronically dehydrated. And then we can live about 40 days without food. So yes, food is important, but we also sometimes overfix and focus on food, and then just water and just breathing correctly is so important. But if we come back to nutrition, a question that I ask my clients is just simply, why do you eat? Why would we eat food? You answer me. Why would you eat?
Why would you eat food? To provide the energy and nutrients and social interaction over food.
Yeah, our clients always tend to give the correct answer, but it is, we eat social, every social event we eat, or it's emotional eating, or simply we're hungry, and for hunger.
So what's your take on that question?
But essentially we eat for energy. Food is there to sustain us, that's a fuel to keep us going. And if we typically feel low in energy, low in spirit, we'll crave that something to lift us and give us that boost. And so typically, most of us will be drawn to a chocolate, just to eat that chocolate bar, because it contains quite a bit of sugar. And that sugar will be converted in the body to energy. And that will give us that energy boost and lift our spirit.
So through the biochemical pathways, we know that sugar or basic carbohydrates end up producing ATP or energy. So do we need anything more than these macronutrients then?
Yes, I'll explain it around the Krebs cycle that you've mentioned. We convert carbohydrates, we convert in the sugar, the sucrose, to glucose, and that in the Krebs cycle is then converted to ATP, to energy. And I'll explain it this way. If we think, we have millions and billions of cells in our body. And in all these cells is all these chemical reactions taking place. I mean, to convert a chocolate to energy is quite phenomenal what the body must be able to do. And there's about 70 trillion chemical reactions taking place in our body every second. We don't think of ourselves as this energy combustion process and all these things happening all the time. And every single chemical reaction taking place needs a specific enzyme to catalyze that reaction, to make it happen. And the enzymes need specific vitamins and minerals. We call them the coenzymes. So they help the enzymes to make it happen. Maybe just to keep in the back of our mind is enzymes will inactivate at 48 centigrade. So anything that's going through processing in a heat treatment will inactivate these enzymes.
Okay, so you're talking about food, for example. So
processed food and food. But if I draw it to another analogy, if we look at a fire, if I have a fire and I have some firewood, the stacked fire there, the firewood is the fuel. That's what we need as a burning material. So that's our carbohydrates and to some extent protein and fat. So that's the fuel. And then I've got enough oxygen around that fire because the fire needs oxygen. But if I have that nice stacked fire with oxygen, what else would I need to get that fire to go, to burn?
Something to start it.
To ignite it. And to spark it. And that's the enzymes, vitamins and minerals that we need. I have a red Ferrari analogy, but I tell all my clients that they're a beautiful, sexy red Ferrari. And if we have that car, what would you do if you have a Ferrari parked in your garage?
If I could afford a Ferrari, I'd look after it.
That's the thing. You'll care for it. You'll nourish. You'll nurture. You know, and you'll look after that car. But are you more valuable than a red Ferrari?
Yeah, of course.
But do we put petrol and oil in our car effectively as we're supposed to be? And it's that analogy. If we think about the carbohydrates, that's a fuel for the car. That's a petrol. But the enzymes, vitamins, and minerals is the oil to keep the engine going. And I think it's also a nice analogy because it's in proportion. You know, we need lots of fuel for the car and much less oil. But what's going to happen to your car if you don't put oil in there?
Try out the engine and
you're going to seize that engine and it's going to run out. So we need less, but it's still vitally important. Now I eat that chocolate, just a normal chocolate bar, and it's not a chocolate coming out the other end. So the body is processing, metabolizing it, breaking it down to energy. But in that chocolate bar, is there any live enzymes?
Not too many, no.
No, because it's heat processed and going through a lot of processing. And any vitamins and minerals?
No, they don't tend to fortify chocolate bars.
No. So if it's not in the chocolate, where will my body get these nutrients to metabolize and break down these reactions?
From within.
From within. And the first place that we will draw nutrients and deplete nutrients is from our skin. Because it's our largest organ, but not the most active. I'm not going to steal from my heart or my liver. You know, they're very important organs. They're vital. So we first take from our skin, and that's the first sign of aging. We start to get wrinkles.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then we start to deplete from our bones. As we age, bone density decreases. We get osteoporosis, and in old age, we get all these bone fractures. And where there's a fire, there's smoke. So with all this, with any combustion process, you know, there's all this metabolic waste that will form in the system. So we have smoke and toxins that we release, and we have all these nutrients that we deplete. And on a cellular level, if I have a sick cell, I have a sick organ, a sick system, and a sick body in the end of the day. And that is chronic disease. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, fibromyalgia, doesn't matter. All is because either nutritional deficiencies or toxicity rising. And I think the big thing that we have to ask ourselves, and the problem with our food is processed food. But anything we put in our mouth, you have to ask yourself the question, am I now giving to my system? Or am I actually taking away? And we don't think of our food in that sense. And the biggest culprit is refined carbohydrates.
Yeah, we're in a kind of era now of just thinking about the macros. You know, it's how much energy are you getting?
That's the thing.
Carbs and
it's
fats
always
and proteins.
Just stuck and focus on that, the fuel, the petrol, but we neglect the micronutrients, but they're absolutely essential and vital. And the biggest culprit in our diet depleting nutrients is our refined carbohydrates. Because if you eat the chocolate, we'll typically think of extra kilo on the hip. You don't see a chocolate as something that's depleting or drawing nutrients from your system. You won't eat a chocolate for its health benefits, unless it's organic, 90% cacao coffee. But a general chocolate bar, we know it's not good, and you'll eat it and maybe I'm going to pick up some weight, but you don't realize that is actually in effect robbing the system and depleting the body of nutrients. So that's a very important concept to grasp.
So you can actually eat something that takes away, well, you end up with less than you had before you ate it.
Well, that's basically what it boils down to. And the biggest culprit is refined carbohydrates, because if we think of sugar cane, it's a live plant growing there with all the enzymes, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Everything is in that plant that's needed to convert the sucrose to glucose to energy. But what do we do? Through refining and processing, we isolate it. Is that white, pure, refined sugar stripped away of all these essential nutrients. So it's a petrol, the fuel, but no oil. So that is being removed. And yes, it fills the tummy, it gives some energy, but it doesn't contain. And then just that whole concept, if it's not giving, it will actually deplete. It's also in our grains, in the husk or the hull, the outside layers of the grain, where most of my nutritional value lie. So with all the refining and processing, it's all those outer layers that I remove. So it's still the starch in the middle that's behind, fills the tummy, gives energy, but it's not those essential nutrients. It's white rice, white pasta, white bread, that biscuit here and there, or that rusk in the morning to fill us, or even our box cereal.
Yeah, anything that's been refined.
Refined and processed. So yet again, it's a petrol, fills the tummy, gives energy, but no oil, so it's depleting. So, and then if we think, we might say, oh, but I don't really have sugar. But if we think just one soda has up to equivalent of 8 teaspoons of sugar in. And sugar is hidden in so many foods and so many guises, but like I say, most of our food is quite refined, and that's the bulk of what we eat, or sort of is our carbohydrates. Doesn't mean carbohydrates bad. We need the complex carbohydrate, like a sweet potato, with the skin, or jacket potato with the skin, or butternut, or our whole grains, brown rice. Those are essential because it has all the nutrients to help to metabolize and process.
In other words, the way nature made them.
The way God made, not man-made.
What about other things that might deplete the system that we typically have as daily habits?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that habit, because it's sort of all about habits. And I think you mentioned once before that anything that's a habit is not good. That 1 cup of coffee a day, or that one thing we do habitual is what's not sort of what we shouldn't do.
Yeah,
but
we need to challenge habits. They're not necessarily all bad, but
I
should
think
challenge them,
and also to realize the consequences. So the first one that I'll mention is smoking. When we smoke, nicotine will boost reactions in the system, will sort of let lift and has a boosting effect, nicotine, stimulating effect, stimulants. But it's not nourishing, and it also produces a lot of free radicals and oxidative stress in the body, so that will then deplete a lot of antioxidants, vitamin C, but also others, vitamin E, beta-carotene, and it's actually, that's why, because of a vitamin A deficiency, also antioxidant, that's why we get the emphysema. So it's not only the tar in the lungs. We think, okay, smoking's not good and it's tar in the lungs, but we don't realize on a cellular level we're also depleting nutrients.
And you can see in smokers, long-term smokers, their skin health changes.
Well, because of zinc deficiency, we deplete zinc, and zinc is so crucial for skin health, because smoking will increase cadmium levels, and that will then have a lowering effect on zinc. So yes, it's skin health, but in immune health, and has a major effect. So smoking will deplete, but then also if we look at alcohol, that glass of red wine has up to 12% sugar in it. And also the alcohol has to be broken down, detoxified by the system, the ethanol to acetaldehyde. And it needs enzymes to do that. And the enzymes need vitamins and minerals. And those are not necessarily present in the alcohol. And not being in the alcohol, it means it's going to take it from our system. I just know these specific enzymes need a mineral like molybdenum, which is in pulses. It's not in wine or beer.
Wine and pulses pairing.
Maybe a little bit of whiskey or beer, lots of hops, or sort of the grains, but hardly. And so these minerals, vitamins, is not in the alcohol to help to process. It's high in sugar, fermented. The alcohol, the ethanol, the body has to break down, and it doesn't have the nutrients. So it will in effect deplete and take from our system. And the same with caffeine. That cup of coffee to kickstart our engine in the morning.
Yeah, what's wrong with a cup of coffee then?
Well, it's the same. It's a stimulant. It boosts, and kickstart your engine and get you going. But the caffeine drive reactions without supporting those reactions. Also, the big thing with alcohol and caffeine, it dehydrates the system. They say for 1 beer, you'll pee out 2. So it has the diuretic effect. And that's our water-soluble nutrients, our B vitamins and our vitamin C, that we will then deplete out of our system, and among other nutrients as well. But it's even normal tea, it's high in tannins and even caffeine. So, it will drive, it gives us that boost and as a stimulant, but it's negative stimulants because it's inexpensive of our own system.
What about something like green tea? Is that a little bit softer on the system?
It's high. It's in bioflavonoids and sort of antioxidants, but nevertheless, it's still caffeine. So it's sort of balancing. I would advise my clients not to have more than 1 to 2 cups of green tea even in a day. Because having 10 cups of green tea, could have that same stimulating effect, but not enough of the nutrients to help and support. So I think it's once we understand completely this whole concept of, food needs to be metabolized, broken down, it has stimulating effects, it stimulates that 70 trillion chemical reactions every second. But it's a vast quantity of nutrients that we need to support that. And it is not, in all these products that I've mentioned, is very limited nutrients.
Yeah, and there's only one way to get them, and through good food.
We'll get there. But another factor that's it's not really depleting, but the real spanner in the works is additives. All the colorants and flavorants and preservatives and these things that's added to food. What will happen to your red Ferrari if you just bang a spanner in there, in the engine? Or have a loose screw, or a screw that's not really fitting.
Yeah, okay, the engine ends up breaking down.
It's going to break down, and that's what we do on a daily basis. Just by eating anything out of a tin or a box or a can or bag or anything processed, if we start to read the labels, there's such a long list of preservatives, colorants, flavorants, all these things that's added to food. And they're literally like a spanner in the works. The body sees this strange, funny, synthetic molecule, doesn't know what to do with it, it doesn't fit into this delicate metabolic pathways. So it will store it in the fat cells. Maybe later I'll be able to use this. So there they build up and accumulate. Many of them is carcinogenic, will cause cancer in the long run.
Yeah.
And then it puts more stress on the liver to try to detoxify it and break it down. And yet again, it will deplete in more nutrients. And something like tartrazine will make that we don't absorb zinc properly. So it causes a lot of imbalances, and we don't realize. So it's not only the stimulants that's depleting, but it's also these toxins basically that we get into.
The man-made chemicals in our food.
And we're exposed to, so one loaf of bread can have up to 22 different chemicals, and they're not all on the label, because it's just even in the flour, the baker might buy the flour and he just put flour on the label, but that flour has gone through so many different bleaching and chlorine dioxide and a lot of processing and other chemicals and calcium propionate and things that's added that's not necessarily appearing on the label.
That's quite scary, because even I will tell clients to read the label, but if all it's saying is flour, it looks okay to them.
Well, it's just also a basic saying, if you read that label and there's more than 2 things on that label that you don't know what it is, it's all those E numbers and all these long, funny chemical names, but just more than 2 of things, don't eat it, and basically we should not eat anything out of a box or a tin, but just an exaggerating. But yes, we expose, and it's not only through our food, we're exposed to so many different chemicals. It's also the pesticides and herbicides, that's not even on the label and not visible to the eye, and all these things. But just to realize they are huge spanners in the work, and they will have a huge effect on all these metabolic processes. The body is so uniquely designed, but we need to support it. And then the other factor is medication.
Of course, yeah, another modern thing.
If we have a headache, typically we'll drink a pain pill to block that pain reaction. But we don't have a headache because of an aspirin deficiency. But we'll typically drink that pain pill to block the reaction. But we have a headache because of dehydration or magnesium deficiency or toxic blood circulating through the brain. So just simply taking a pain pill to block the reaction is not treating that underlying cause. We're just masking. What's going to happen to your red Ferrari if the oil light comes on? What would you do?
Stick the Band-Aid over it.
No, well, that's what we do with the headache, and drinking a pain pill.
Of course, you
but
take action.
You'll take action. If the oil light comes on, you put oil in. So if the oil light comes on, I've got that headache. Okay, maybe I need water. Take action. That car's overheating. Or it's magnesium deficient, it needs oil. So we put oil into that engine. But no, we put a Band-Aid on there, can't see the problem, so it's gone. Or even worse, we unscrew that light bulb. Then I can't see it, the problem is gone. It's literally, it is cutting out that tumor, so then the cancer is gone. But we haven't treated that
later.
underlying cause, the underlying things, what has led to that cancer or that headache in the first place. So just really to realize medication is treating symptoms, but not the underlying cause of why we're ill. So important.
That's very important.
And then the last but not least, a factor that's affecting our health is stress that we've mentioned. But I believe we should balance our body, mind, and spirit. We can't only eat hamburgers and Coke and say, God save me. We need to take care of our physical body. That car, that red Ferrari needs petrol, but it needs oil. And it needs a polish and wash and cared for. Bit of love. But that physical body we need to look after. But then it's our emotional stress. And we're all exposed just to so many things. But it's like driving that car on high rev. On high revolution. So we burn more petrol, more oil, more exhaust fumes. And it's that whole acceleration of the aging process. And it's not the fight and flight, where we run away from a line situation, but it becomes like a chronic internal stress. I want to say the Zuma politics or the weather or, just the husband or the wife or the children or work stress. It's just that everyday stress we're exposed to that is really, the biggest effect on our aging disease process.
All additive.
And then it's spiritual health. And for me, that is the most important in the top. And that doesn't mean it's a religious, dogmatic spirit. But it is, for me, the spiritual qualities that's extremely important. God is love. So it's that personal relationship we build with God. God is love. It's the opposite of fear. And I don't think we even comprehend what unconditional love means. Nevertheless, how to apply it daily in our daily life. But then the other spiritual qualities that's very important to me is the other factor is living in the now, in the present. If we think about yesterday, we're depressed. If I think about my sleepless night, or if I think about tomorrow, we get anxious, all the things I need to do. But it's literally living in the moment.
Yeah, the power of now.
The power of now. My one survival mechanism or slogan with one of my best friends is 5 minutes at a time. Just to focus like in increments of 5 minutes. But it's living in the present, and then very important, we need to have a spiritual purpose. What's the reason for you to get out of bed every morning? If you don't have that, what is my destination that I want to achieve or where I want to get in life? It's no point of getting up out of bed in the morning. So you see those people that have a passion and a drive, they're healthy, and they look after themselves and sort of balance. But we need to clarify that. And I see, especially in cancer clients, but in a lot of my clients, where we don't have that reason to live, then the body is going to wither away. But also then I'm going to look after that car. If I have a goal and a passion, and I know this is my spiritual purpose, and I want to change the world, and I want to do this and accomplish this, then I'm going to look after my Ferrari to make sure I can reach that destination. So we have to have that drive. But body, mind, and spirit, we can't take apart.
No, they're all integrated.
They're also integrated, and all those factors are very important. But I think to come back to nutrition and sort of the physical body, we focus on all these stimulants that will deplete. So what do we need to recuperate or to put back? And that's literally that 7 to 9 different fruits and vegetables that we need on a daily basis, because they supply the enzymes, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all that, the oil, the vital nutrients.
So are you suggesting like 7 to 9 servings of fruit and vegetables?
It basically boiled down to servings. We'll also get to variety, but I usually limit it to 1 or 2 fruit per day.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to eat 7 bananas or fruit salad, but it's a kale, broccoli, spinach, celery, Brussels sprouts that we don't eat on a daily basis, which is more nutrient dense. So, and fruit is high in sugar content, water, easily yeast and molds that grow on it, high in nutrients and antioxidants and bioflavonoids and fiber, but 1 or 2 per day, but more to focus on those vegetables.
Yeah.
And that helps. Another analogy is also to look at a bank account. We all most children, and sadly not even today, but are born as a bundle of energy and health, and it's like having a full bank account of enzymes, vitamins, minerals, all these nutrients. But what's going to happen to your bank account if you only draw money out of there and not deposit back? We end up in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then I see with my clients, it's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, we bankrupt, but we have got quite a big overdraft. You know? And it's a lot of repaying. So, you know, in cancer clients, I would say up to 15 to 18 different vegetables, you know,
Right.
fruit, vegetables per day. But it's a lot of repaying that we need to do to restore. But I think this whole concept, just anything that we put in our mouth to understand, am I giving to my system or am I not actually depleting nutrients? And it's just another way of viewing food and the effect that processed food has to our system.
So apart from vegetables, what else can you do to achieve health?
I bring it or boil it down to 3 basic dietary rules, because I think we get so confused with all the diet philosophies and fads and this diet and that diet. So for me to bring it to the core 3 basic rules, number 1 for me would be God-made, not man-made. So food in its most unprocessed, unrefined form is the best. And that's a big problem because nothing is God-made anymore. You know, even the seeds, you know, we don't get heirloom seeds. It's genetically modified. Seeds are so hybridized over the years. The soil is depleted, it's synthetic fertilizers. Things are grown not even in the soil anymore. You know, it's hydroponically grown. And then it's a pesticides, a herbicides. So even our fresh produce, you know, so they've tested so depleted in nutrients. They've tested some of the oranges in the UK, has 0% vitamin C in them. You know, it's also the produce is picked when it's grass green and then shipped twice around the world before it ends up in our plate. But nevertheless, not doom and gloom. You know, it's better to eat that commercial apple in the shop than to drink apple juice or tinned apple. So it is just the food in its most unprocessed, unrefined, whole form is the best, opposed to processed. And just eating in that way is already a challenge, a big challenge.
And what else? You said three rules you had.
The second rule is meal proportions. Okay. Because I can't simply eat biltong every day, the whole day, and say, but that's God made. You know, so we need to balance. And I usually have this whole analogy where I explain it with a plate of food. And literally 20% on that plate should be our complex carbohydrate. That's our brown rice, our sweet potato, whole grains, our potato, butternut, starchy veg. But then 20% on our plate should be our protein. That's our fish, chicken, meat, eggs, a little bit of dairy, beans, pulses. And then 10% fats and oils. That's our seeds, nuts, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil. But half on our plate should be salad vegetables. And it's important that every meal should be balanced like this in these proportions. All our carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are acid forming. But salads and vegetables are alkaline forming. And it's just to bring that and get that balance into our diet. But I got to the amazing sort of revelation is that this is exactly according to body composition. We are 60 to 70% water. You know, that's, like we said, water is the most important and that's sort of the biggest phase. And salad and vegetables hold water and to some extent whole grains, but not proteins and fats. So that's 50 to 70, you know, that salad, vegetables, complex carbohydrates, that's all that micronutrients, the fiber, the water phase, you know, sort of representing that. But our composition, body composition, 20% is protein. So it makes sense to me to proportionally, you know, our dietary intake should be 20% protein. And then the ideal body composition is 10 to 12% fats and oils. That's also how a cell is put, you know, the composition of a cell. That's 60, 70% water, 20% of that cell, the organelles in the cell is protein, and then the cell membrane is the fats. That's 10 to 12%. So if all the cells are made up like that, that's how our body as a whole is a composition.
That's fascinating.
And then for me, it makes really sense to eat proportionally to that, to our own body composition. And I've seen it with my clients. You know, you get people that don't have animal protein in their diet. They will typically eat a raw food diet, lots of sprouts, you know, and your vegetables, loads of vegetables, salads. But I find that proteins are grounding. You know, that's literally sort of like your complex carbohydrates, proteins, fats are heavier. But it's sort of literally that fact where it's grounding us. Whereas your salad vegetables are lighter, but it's sort of like that more enlightenment of being, but it is important to balance the two aspects. And I can see it in my clients, the effect.
Yeah, you don't want to be too heavy, too grounded, but you don't want to be flying away either.
Floating away, or can almost say airy-fairy out there. So it is so important too, but that's sort of more on a philosophical level. But literally, you know, if we look, and just between the whole acid alkaline, but every meal should be balanced like this. My favorite breakfast remains an omelette in the morning with vegetable filling, or a frittata, stir-fried vegetables with egg in there. Yeah. Or if you have your muesli, your complex carbohydrates, a little bit of yogurt, your seeds and nuts and berries. You know, so literally to make sure every meal we properly balance with all these nutrients. And we need, the protein is also helping to balance blood sugar levels. So it's where it's important.
And what else? If somebody achieves these?
Well, if you manage to achieve these 3 rules, the big challenge is just hydration. And we're supposed to drink 300 milliliter of purified water per day per 10 kilogram of body weight. So if you're typically 70, 80 kilo, that's 2.5 liters up to 3 liters of water per day just to maintain health. Your average person that's your 60 kilo, you know, that's your typical 8 glasses of water, 2 liters of water. But somebody that's 100 or 120 kilo need more water. And that's your 3 to 4 liters of water per day. And that's not tea and coffee, that's minus a glass of water or that wine. So yes, most of us is just chronically dehydrated. And like I say, coming back to the basics, you know, it's these basic things that we don't have correct in place. And it's just that simple analogy. What's going to happen to your car if you don't put enough water? I gave a talk at a biodynamic conference, and then I started out with this analogy. You know, it doesn't help we have a heirloom seed, you know, this very healthy seed and this very biodynamic, good compost, permaculture, very enriched soil, but we don't water that plant. And it sounds absurd, but it's what we do, you know, with our system. We are dehydrated.
Okay, so you've mentioned 3 really important areas of dietary health. If somebody was to achieve those, can you go a little bit deeper, or are there some other pointers that you give to people?
I have another 7 dietary rules. You know, if one can do further refining, I call it my 10 dietary commandments. So the 3 primary, but the 7 secondary rules, if I just briefly go over them, is quality versus quantity. Yeah. So we start over focus of calorie counting and how big must the portions be on my plate, but it's not so much about that, it is about the quality of our food. And if we can try to eat organic, local, seasonal, you know, that is fantastic. And then also to look at balance and moderation, you know, sort of like, and that comes into that proportions, you know, to have a balanced diet, but of all the food groups, you know, and that we need the animal protein, but we also need the beans and pulses. That has an important mineral for detoxification like molybdenum. But then the animal protein is the sulfur amino acids and containing sulfur. So we need that balance, but then also everything in moderation. That 1 cup of coffee maybe a day, we'll get to that. But then it's also to look at elimination intolerances. I've just brought it in because a lot of clients that I work with colon disorders or problems are maybe very gluten intolerant or we dairy intolerant. So that is a very important factor, the things that we know is aggravating symptoms, that we eliminate that from our diet. And then just the second point is variety. You know, we tend to just get stuck on that bowl of oats in the morning or muesli and yogurt and then a sandwich for lunch and our cooked meal for supper. But we just simply don't eat enough variety. And then just within, you know, our vegetables, you know, I just like peas and maybe I'll eat cucumber and tomatoes. You know, and we don't get a big spectrum, you know, the garlic and onions and like I said, the cruciferous vegetables, but it's the colors, the big spectrum of colors. We need the blueberries, you know, and the red fruit and bring that variety into our diet. And then the whole debate between raw and cooked, what's bad and good.
Yeah, that's
But
a big one.
that's where my whole mantra comes in again, and that's balance. I believe 50% should be raw and 50% should be cooked.
Okay.
The minute we expose it to heat, we inactivate the enzymes, but we destroy a lot of our vitamins and minerals with cooking as well. But then also through cooking, there's a lot of our minerals that's better exposed, like lycopene in tomato and carotene in carrots. And the big health thing out there these days are bone broths. I mean, that's cooked till death for 48, 72 hours to extract all those minerals. So the minerals is very important. So we need cooked and raw. And for me, it's a good balance between the two. And then just fermented foods. In the olden days, I didn't preserve, or they preserved through fermentation. And we got all those essential probiotics. But so sauerkraut, just olives that's naturally fermented, and kefir, your fermented milks, is important in our diet. And then to literally spice it up, we need the spices like our turmeric, your curcumin, our cayenne pepper, garlic, onion. All these spices and herbs are essential and has a lot of nutrients, high nutrient content, nutraceuticals.
They all have medicinal qualities.
Medicinal qualities in them, and I think we get, our diets become bland, and we sort of overly sweet, maybe salty, but we lose our appetite, for just to spice it up. Then stimulants. We don't need them. It's that habitual, but having our tea or coffee or alcohol or just chocolate. I'm a chocoholic, to stimulate. But just to realize we don't need them. I usually tell my clients to focus on the good things we need, and then the more we feed our body with the right nutrients, the less we'll crave for the bad things or the stimulants, the negative stimulants. And then the last thing is just love. Just to eat food with love and care. And it's just those family values. We don't even sit around a family table, dinner table, and eat, and just conscious eating, mindful eating. Those qualities is also very important.
That's great. Okay, so apart from food, what can we do lifestyle-wise?
I'm glad you asked that question, because for me, diet is one of the most important foundation aspects. That's how we can dig our grave with a knife and fork. And we are what we eat. And I think I focus a lot on nutrition because we have control over what we put in our life. Yeah. We don't have control over all the other factors, but nevertheless they're very important. And I've also summarized them in 10 health commandments. Number 1 is spirituality. We've spoken about that. But the greatest supreme ethic is love, unconditional love. And then we've spoken about diet. So just having, for me, the simple dietary philosophy is unprocessed whole food in the right balanced proportions, and to make sure we have enough hydration. But then definitely we need to rest. That car, you can't drive that car 24/7, so we need the rest and sleep, your 7 to 8 hours per night. But it's also important to go early to bed and early to rise, rather opposed to go work or party till midnight and then sleep late. Because our body makes melatonin and serotonin between 10 in the evening and 3 in the morning. So it's very important to sleep those hours.
It's more based on the rhythms of nature,
well, that is, we have plants that close in the evening and open up in the morning, and we are so, and we don't realize how we base on those rhythms of nature. But yet again, we need sleep, meditation, rest, just to recuperate, very important. And then to avoid toxins as much as possible, but we've spoken about it, how it's literally a spanner in the works. And it's toxins just even in the furniture, in the air we breathe. We're just exposed to so many different toxins through the water we drink, but just try to avoid them as much as possible. And then movement and air. I was writing a text message the other day, or yesterday, and I just realized halfway through I'm not breathing. And it's just that simple thing. We're so busy, but we just don't. We don't sit up straight, we don't breathe, but also movement. And it doesn't mean running a marathon every day, but it's just being on the move through the whole day. They say, even if we sit for that 8 hours a day, and then we exercise for an hour in the gym, it's almost just as bad. We need to move right through the day and be active. And that's a problem. We sedentary lifestyles, sit in the office for 8 hours. And it's through movement that our lymph flow, and it's very important. Yeah. You'll be able to.
There's plenty more we can
say about that. Yeah. But movement and air, very important factor. And then elimination. And I think for me, working with the gut, but we must make sure our plumbing system work effectively. I find lots of my clients are chronically constipated because of dehydration, but also because of the imbalance of microbes in the colon. And just maybe it is such an important aspect of health, so I'll just quickly elaborate on that. The way I explain it to my client is we have more microbes in our colon and on our skin than body cells. The microorganisms outnumber our body cells, anything from 5 to 400 times. So I tell my clients, you're more gogo than human. It's a very South African word. But these microbes, we have more microbes than actually human cells. And it's a balance between that microbes that will determine our health. If we have more bad organisms than good ones, that's going to affect our health. Yeah. The good probiotics, beneficial microbes, they like earthworms, keeping that soil lubricated and loose and aerated and healthy. They help to break down food and produce nutrients. Whereas the pathogenic bad organisms feed on our nutrients, plus they produce toxins. So it's that double negative. And that's our fungi, parasites, pathogenic bacteria. And if we have more of that than our good guys, that's going to cause disease. It's going to deplete us more of nutrients and produce a lot of biotoxins, toxins in our system. And I think for us just to realize that one course of antibiotics is enough to change our microbiome or this balance for life. And there's many other factors that will affect, but just in short, most of us sit with a gut dysbiosis, the imbalance of gut flora, and that will have a major effect. But just back to plumbing system, a healthy person should have a bowel movement 3 times a day. If you look at a small child, after every meal they have a dirty nappy, yeah. You will know. And it's a clean system, food moving through. The transit time for food is anything from 7 to 12 hours, moving through the colon. And if you go only once in 3 days, it's a question of asking yourself, where's all that food stuck in my system? Yes. And then sort of more opportunity for fermentation and things happening. They say it's normal to go once in 3 days, but what's the norm doesn't mean that's what's healthy. So at least once a day, a good form stool, but ideally after every meal, we should have that. So make sure our plumbing system work efficiently. And then just to manage our stress levels, we are exposed, we can't get away from stress, but just to make sure that we manage that. It's also, and especially in cancer clients, we see they internalize all the stress. When I was a child and my mom saw I had become difficult, she would say, put on your jogging shoes, but we need to find ways, whether it's meditation or exercise or just expressing our concerns, but we need to manage. And then electromagnetic smog. We're in such a wireless electronic era at the moment, but wherever we go, we're so exposed to all these electromagnetic, children in school, everything is wireless. The cell phones, we just on computers and the whole day, and that has a major effect. So we need to take, and I especially see it in my brain cancer clients, but in a lot of disease, neuropathies and a lot of other things, and especially also the effect then with heavy metals in the system. I've seen amazing cases.
Yeah, you mentioned that previously to me with the link with heavy metals and increased susceptibility to electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah, I had an amazing case of a client that went overseas and visited her son there, and then just had major stress with her daughter-in-law, and she got this bad neuropathy in her face, and just very weird sensations if she sits in front of her computer. Right. And when I asked her, I thought she has a lot of amalgam fillings, and when I asked her to open her mouth, her whole palate was a silver plate. So she had all that, and I think she might have had amalgam fillings, but that silver and that metal in the electromagnetic field, but a very interesting factor, how that was exacerbated or sort of set off by stress. And it was me such a classic illustration of how these things have an effect. And then just recreation and pleasure. They say laughter is the best medicine, but we don't make enough time just to do things we enjoy, be out in the sun. And then last but not least is just wise supplementation I brought in, but I think we mentioned that analogy, we're all in overdraft, and it just bottom line, even healthy what we perceive as healthy food is devoid and depleted in nutrients. We're just not getting the nutritional value from our food that we need, and we are exposed to a lot of toxins and a lot of chronic stress, but then also a lot of toxins. And for our body to be able to detoxify the toxins, we need more nutrients. So to make up for that deficit or to balance, we need good supplementations, but then it's also to make sure that we use good quality supplementations and work with a health practitioner to have a wise supplementation regime. But in the same breath, supplements will never make up for a bad diet and lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's still key, but there is times, and especially when we have chronic disease, where we will be able to make up, or where we need wise supplementation.
So what about genetics? You've mentioned several factors that are depleting to the body, but there are people in this life that seem to survive okay with the daily coffees or even the daily cigarettes in some cases. What about individuality?
It's good that you mention and bring up that point. I think if we look at simplicity, we can ascribe 5% of our health and well-being to genetics, but 95% to lifestyle and diet. It's easy, in Afrikaans it would be as saying, so gemaak, so gelaat staan. But my father has diabetes, and that's why I've got diabetes. And we so easily blame it on genetics. Yeah. But actually only 5% of our disease state or cases we can ascribe to genetics. 95% remain lifestyle and diet. And I can explain it this way: you a red Ferrari and that person is a white Porsche and I'm a blue Jeep. And genetically we look a little bit differently, and our genetics looks differently, but how that car performs and is more determined, and the lifespan of that car, by lifestyle and diet. Did we put the right petrol in the car? Did we put oil in the car? Did we clean that engine? How hard did we drive that car? My Jeep can outlive and outperform your Ferrari if I care for it better.
Yeah, and I don't care for my Ferrari.
But then also, yet again, you've got this beautiful Ferrari, but it comes out of the factory with a little bit of a backfire. Your liver, there's one enzyme I typically see in my cancer clients, I deplete it in the glutathione S-transferase enzyme that help the body utilize glutathione, a super antioxidant. And if we have that genetic factor in our liver, so we have a little bit of a backfire, but I drive that car carefully, I put the best grade petrol and oil in that car, it's not necessarily going to express into disease. But if I have that backfire and I don't really put the best grade petrol and I don't even bother to put oil in that car and I drive that car hard, we are going to run into problems. So I hope that answers your question.
That's a good analogy, thanks.
But yet again, and we think sometimes it's unfair because that person have moderation of alcohol and coffee and smoke and seem to be fine. But yet our genetics and what we expose, and even just what we inherit from our parents. If my mom is depleted in nutrients, I'm going to be depleted in the same nutrients. And the same with toxins. If they have toxins, especially something like mercury, it's going to be concentrated in that fetus, or the toxins that we inherit. So we're all exposed to different factors, but yet again, it determines on our lifestyle and diet, And then I think the important thing to realize is we only been given this one car for life. You can't trade it in for another model or another car. And it is just literally how we care and how well we look after that car. That's essential.
So let's move away from cars and go to boats, because you've got an excellent boat analogy as well, which is representative of the weight of different health or lack of health habits. Can you explain that? Yes,
I think it comes in with prevention, but then also with all my clients, and I think it comes in with this whole genetic thing that you've asked. I'm fine in my life, I have moderation, and here and there smoke and a coffee and a drink. But until that one day I have a major stress event or a viral attack or something, and then I see it typically in my clients, then you see a fast decline in their health. And I like to use the analogy of a boat, but we all have a hole in the hull of the boat somewhere. Say it's that weak genetic factor, the liver. But But while there's not a lot of cargo on the boat and it's light and that hull is far above the waterline, my boat will be afloat and fine. But then through time, we add sort of this stress on our boat. We dehydrate it, we just simply don't get enough water. There is a couple of other containers, toxicity, nutrient deficiencies, our diet is not perfect. And then we go through a major stress event and that push our boat down into the waterline. And it's just a question when that hull then hits the waterline and then it's just like that first fast decline. Yeah. And it's even like a cancer tumor, it's many years that it takes to develop. But it's once it's diagnosed, or sort of we know, or it becomes sort of threatening other organs, and then once we have a heart attack, and it's once that hull hit the waterline, then it's very difficult to get it out of the water again. So it's that whole prevention. Try to see where we can eliminate weight, stress on our boat, and make it lighter. All these factors that's weighing our boat down. And then also we can fix that hull, that hull's rusting more and more. I work a lot with stomach acidity that's declining. It's also there's biotoxins and then the gut dysbiosis. But fixing that hull, and then there's enough buoyancy. We would say, I would not recommend, or a cancer client of mine that is undergoing chemotherapy and is extremely ill will not have alcohol or caffeine. But because the body is so deeply weighed down and that hole is so big, but you that's healthier would have that, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have effect. If it has effect on a very ill client, it has effect on you, but your body just have more tolerancy, buoyancy.
Yeah, reserves to deal with it.
Reserves to deal with it, and that's yet again, if you're out of that disease state. My boat sank when I was 30 years old, but now more than 17 years later, I feel better than ever before. But it took a long time to get that boat out of the water. But then when it's out of the waterline, there's a lot of my age, things that I do now that I didn't even think of doing when I was in my teens. But, so there is always that hope. And then there's some more balance and tolerancy, for just following a balanced, moderate lifestyle.
So thanks, Heidi. That's some really, really nice insights. Have you got any little pearls of wisdom you want to finish off with?
I think my philosophy that I came, or a conclusion, or sort of philosophical, this realization that the real art of life is not to be perfect in one specific sphere of life, but rather to find or aspire to a perfect balance between all the areas in our life. To be a perfect husband or father to your children, and to exercise and work and find time for recreation and pleasure. That's much more difficult to find that balance opposed to be a super athlete and be out and work out in the gym every day. That's easy. But we tend to be focused, to be perfect in this one area, or we overwork, or, try to achieve success. But for me, the real success is to find a balance between all these aspects in life.
Yeah, brilliant. And you've written a recipe book as well. What's it called, and what was your focus?
It's this whole philosophy is whole food, so it's naturally nutritious, a whole food cookbook, and it's just about whole food. And it was for me the importance of everyday cooking. Most recipe books out there is fancy, elaborate cooking, expensive ingredients, and it's what's locally available. But I also found to my clients, my book is gluten-free, wheat-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, because some clients in a disease state, it is best to eliminate for a time period these ingredients. And if you mention about chickpeas or mung beans or all these alternative grains, they had no cooking clue what I'm talking about. So it was for me a good motivation, just bring a recipe book and bring these lesser known food. And just practical, easy, everyday recipes, how to make them. Yeah,
thanks. Well, Rachel and I love your book.
Thank you.
Where can people buy it?
It's available through my online website, myhealingprotocol.com, okay. And selected health shops also stock the book.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi.